tuning in to the World XP podcast. If you're enjoying the content, please remember to drop a sub, drop a like, and leave your thoughts down below in the comments. With that, we will see you guys in the podcast.
Lisa, welcome to the World XP podcast. It's been forever. And now you're in a mental hospital.
And I'm not actually a patient. I'm working there.
Yeah. Surprising. I'm just kidding. All right. How did you end up there?
How did I end up working there?
How did you end up wanting to do that, to get into that line of work?
Okay. So I always wanted to be, actually, funny enough, when I was in 8th grade for superlatives, I was voted best problem solver. That's where it starts. If we take it back to age 13. I always helped people with their problems. Couldn't help myself, but liked helping other people. And then when I was at UMW and I was a senior and my major was Spanish and my minor was in linguistics and I wanted to do grad school, I was like, well, what the hell do I do? And my own therapist said to me, you've always talked about like giving therapy to others, helping other people, and why don't you do that? And I said, because I didn't do psychology in college. I took a one-on-one course.
Yeah.
Said, no, you can go to grad school for social work and do clinical mental health and things like that. And I said, okay. Had no idea what it was, because people hear social work and they automatically, including myself at the time, it's got like a bad rep. You think like people who save the world, like CPS, stuff like that, people who make $40,000 a year. Like in reality, you can work at a private practice as a therapist, as a psychotherapist, and make bank. You can work at a mental hospital. You know what I mean? And it turns out I did both. So when I was in New York, I did therapy one-on-one with clients until I got burnt out. And now in Virginia, I work at a psychiatric hospital. So kind of just wanted to experience both. And I work with really high-risk patients. I work on a psychotic unit, actually. There's 5 units in my hospital, and I work with the psychotics. So
fitting.
Every day is a fun day.
I feel like I might have been your first case study at college. Nah, maybe not. One of the first ones. One of the
you were one of my exes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. For everyone listening, we only speak facts on here.
Literally.
All right. So you texted me earlier today, and the reason why I'm asking you this is because when I read the text, I was exhausted for you. Like something happened in the psychotic part of the hospital, and you had to deal. And from the problem solving perspective, when I listen to that, it's like I'm fairly good at listening or solving problems as well. Like I would help people much in the same vein that you would when we were in school. But when it comes to people that like don't think in like you talk to them and like it doesn't process the same way, I would get personally very frustrated very quickly. So how do you deal with that? Because I would be like, I don't even know. I'd be like, nah, I'm out.
Annoyed, right?
Yeah, extremely.
Yeah, I'm my head out. So the number one thing, and I learned this actually with one of my internships in grad school, that you do when you work with psychotic patients, people who are delusional, hallucinating, and there's 4 different types of hallucinations. So there's just a lot that goes into it, paranoid, etc. Is you never tell them that their reality isn't real. So I've had patients who think they're married to Elvis Presley. First of all, they're shitting themselves, or Elvis is dead. So clearly this is not a real scenario. But if I look them in the eye and I say, hey, Elvis is dead, or Elvis would never go for you, they're going to say, you're wrong. I don't trust you. Get away from me. And I've made no progress. You know what I mean? And now they just hate me. So instead of me just trying to say, hey, you're wrong, I'm kind of just like, I don't want to almost feed the delusion, but you kind of want to use it to better themselves in a sense. So if, for example, that patient was shitting themselves or not taking care of themselves hygienic wise, because a lot of times patients who have schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder, closer all these serious mental illnesses, do suffer with hygiene. For any mental illness, really depression, they put their hygiene to the side. You can use that delusion to almost help them better what they're lacking in. So, okay, well, if you're married to Elvis, he would probably want you to smell good, right?
Yeah.
Like, why don't you hop in the shower? And then boom, they're going to take a shower, something like that. So a lot of the times when I do talk to patients, I'm not kind of going against their delusions, but I'm not feeding into it. I'm just kind of using it to guide them. And that's with people who are depressed. You want to validate them too, even if they are borderline and depressed, where they're manipulative and they're kind of wrong in the scenario. You know what I mean? So that's, you always want to validate people, whether perspectives are based off of emotion and feeling. So it's not factual. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel like that's a tricky balance though.
It is.
To walk that line, because at some point, like, well, so I obviously don't know the answer to this, but at some point, are people just like this, or is there an end goal where it's like we want them to be better? Or I guess it depends on the patient, but like, and we'll use that example, like if there's, let's use the example and say hypothetically they can get better and be like normal, for lack of a better word. How does that you have to like ease off eventually, eventually they have to realize like, hey, no, I'm not married to Elvis. I feel like, how do you do that? Or how would you do that?
So every patient has their own baseline.
Sure.
And some people have worse illness than others. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, some people will develop the type of, especially if they're older, a type of dementia that comes from chronic schizophrenia. You know what I mean? Some people have chronic, acute, paranoid schizophrenia, and then some people don't. Some people just have schizophrenia that can be kind of regulated with an antipsychotic that's much easier regulated than others. I mean, there's patients that have been in this hospital for 30 days where we can't get them to talk to us because their voices are so, paralyzing. And then there's some patients that are in and out in 3 days because the Risperdal that they take is effective. So it really just depends on someone's baseline. Because if your baseline is you still being a little bit delusional, but it's functional and you're stable to be discharged from an inpatient facility and now do outpatient, your main goal is to be able to function in society.
Right.
Then that's our main thing. So we always reach out to families a lot too and say, okay, let's figure out what they are like in a normal day. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes they do live with that delusion, you know what I mean, for the rest of their life. And sometimes it will never go away. But if her thinking that she's married to Elvis doesn't hurt her, and she's not going out there and driving a vehicle that she cannot operate to go meet Elvis in a sense, and that's, you know what I mean, then who cares if she thinks she's married to Elvis?
Yeah, as long as she's not hurting other people or herself, then
right.
That makes sense. So
it's sad. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, it's sad, but so is Alzheimer's.
Yeah, no, for sure. Can you define schizophrenia for those listening, as including myself, who have heard the term but don't actually know what it know exactly what it is?
Mm-hmm. It's kind of when your reality is distorted in a sense, and your thought, it's like a thought disorder. So it can be based off of the fact that you have hallucinations. So those can be auditory, visual, tactile, or olfactory. So if you have auditory hallucinations, you're hearing things, those things can be command hallucinations, so they can tell you to kill yourself, kill others. So you can literally, I had a patient the other day pick up a chair and throw it at another patient, and they have no recollection of it sometimes, because it wasn't them that did it. It was their voices that told them to do it. There's also the defeating voices, you're worthless, you're scum, you're never going to be anything type of thing. There's the voices that are just kind of cool and just talk to you throughout the day. And a lot of times patients will respond to internal stimuli. You see patients pacing up down the hallway, just talking to themselves. And some patients will talk in their native languages. And some patients will talk in languages that don't make sense because they kind of created their own in a sense. Visual, I've had a guy who was whoa, just going like this. I'm what you looking at? He's you see that tiger shark? It just went right past you. Or sometimes they see shadow people, or it's just different types of visual things that they see that we don't see, kind of like being on acid, I've heard. And then there is tactile, which is feeling. So playing with a voodoo doll type of thing. They think something's controlling their body. I have a patient that thinks that she was on fire all the time.
Oh,
her body was heating up. Yeah, so I'm always cold. I would put my hands on her because my hands are always cold, and she would always think she was on fire. So it would make her feel better. And then olfactory smell. You always think there's a smell of something. So those are all the hallucinations. Delusions, delusions of persecution, someone's against you, delusions of grandiose, you are the king of, Virginia, or you're the best and the greatest in the world, different types of delusions like that, or like you're married to Elvis. Paranoia as well. People are out to get you type of thing, which can go in delusions in a way. Different, so many different examples I have. So stuff like that, where your reality is literally distorted, in a sense. So, and then then there's schizoaffective, which is that mixed with also a mood imbalance. It's kind of like that mixed with bipolar, in a sense, where bipolar is mania, depression, mania, depression, mania, depression. So that combination gets a little bit more challenging to deal with, because now you have to manage someone's mood while they're also psychotic, and that's the fun part.
That's fun. We can use fun loosely.
Yeah.
So how do you deal, like, because you mentioned when you were doing the therapy stuff, like when you got burned out and you switched, I feel like this would be quicker to burn out almost, because like every day, like if I was with people that weren't in the reality that I was, or the like in reality every day, I feel like I would go crazy as well. I
get that.
I don't know. Well, I mean, obviously I'm not in it and I don't really wish to be in it. That's why I'm talking to you about it. So like, how do you deal with that?
Well, when I was doing therapy, I did have a couple of patients who were schizophrenic and things like that, and it was difficult, but I had more of the depressed and the anxious and the things like that. And it's funny because everyone who works in my unit now, the way we talk about all the people who suffer from like depression, anxiety, we're like, get over it, like grow up, like we're all sad, which like we clearly don't really mean that. But like when you work in mental health, you learn that every single person on this planet goes through something. You know what I mean? And obviously people who are in mental hospitals at the time, their problems are way more severe than your own, typically 9 times out of 10. But you almost like don't want to hear other people's sadness, especially when you're almost kind of combating your own shit and you just don't want to talk about it out loud. And that's what I was doing when I was in New York, and I was doing therapy one-on-one, and I was in this really shitty relationship, and I was fighting with my family, and I was going through the hardest time of my life during the pandemic. And I was muting patients or clients out of my phone and crying, and then being like, you're so strong, and empowering them because they were bitching about something that was so stupid. I was like, this is so fake of me right now. And in reality, I was trying to help them, but I was so like, it was fake. Whereas with these patients, I like genuinely want them to live a normal life. And like, I have the beauty of having my reality that other people can see too, whereas their reality, nobody else gets. But like, as soon as you, and what I've said to a couple of them that has worked sometimes is, I know you're not going to believe me. I know this is going to sound crazy, and I don't want to invalidate you. And I'm transparent, and it works with some patients, and you got to use it with only some of them. And some of them, it really does work. I say, I don't want to invalidate what you're going through, because I know what you're seeing. I know what you're hearing. I know that's real. I was like, so I know that you're not going to believe me, and I really hope this doesn't ruin our rapport. I'm like, but it's not real. And I'm like, and this that you're taking, it's going to help get rid of these. And this that you're taking is going to help you not see this anymore. And sometimes they're like, yeah, okay. And they get it. You know what I mean? So it's like that is like way more validating in a sense than like faking the whole, like, you're so strong. Like, you know what I mean? So
yeah, because they weren't always that way. Can they pull from like a memory of like when they weren't seeing tiger sharks float by and like things like that? So like when you tell them like it's not actually real, they're like remembering like, oh, maybe it's not.
Yeah, I was assessing a patient the other day who literally, he had 4 different voices in his head, and his voices were real people, like a brother, a sister, a coach, and like a, you know what I mean, whomever. And then as I'm talking to him, he'd be like, what? Because he couldn't focus, because they were all, he would call them disruptive. Because think about like 5 people trying to talk to you at once. You can't hear everybody.
No,
so I would say, yeah, I know. I would say, stay with me. You're here. I would snap, but I'd be like, you're here. You're okay. And then he'd be like, he go, you hear them too, right? And I'd be like, And I would just try to keep him focused in a sense. So I would say, I don't want you to leave until they stop disrupting you, because that way I'm not lying. You know what I mean? They are disrupting him, but I don't want to say like, I don't want you to leave until your voices go away, because he didn't want to hear that. But you know what I mean? So there's a way to validate it without, I don't know. It's a lot that I've learned, but you want to help people. Like it's sad. It's sad to see people like you and I no longer be like you and I, because there's something that's most of the time out of their control.
Yeah.
People who are 21 have their first psychotic episode, young kids. Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah. So one of the issues, or not, issues is that we never, like, we can classify all these things into like the different types of schizophrenia that you were talking about, but really, like, everyone, they're all different. Like, and so it's hard to, and we don't experience it. Like, you don't experience it. So it's really hard to be like, this is how to fix it. And then there's like drugs that will help. But I don't know. Like, I've heard for like antidepressants, I've heard of people that like try and get off, I think it's called like benzodiazepine, and it almost like kills them, and like things like that. So I don't know, like, personally, for medicine, I try and like get over it without medicine all the time if I can, just because that's one, that's like kind of the type of person that I am, but two, like, I hear stories and I get like wary. So is it the same way for you guys when treating? You try and treat without, if possible, before that, or like, again, does it depend on the person and case by case? Because I go back to this often in the podcast. Like, it turns into, no matter what the subject is, it turns into, well, it depends, and it's a case by case basis, and it's all a balancing act. Like, those three things like happen in almost every conversation that I have. It always like usually comes down to one of those three things. So like, I hate to boil it down to that, but again, like, is that the case, or do you like generally, do you have a general, like, we try and do this, then this,
no, we
then
medicate these guys.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because I picked therapy too, because like we've all struggled with our own stuff. So like, I have anxiety, and I have struggled with depression, and I never wanted to. I'm like you, I've never wanted to take medication. Like, I'll have a headache and I won't take Tylenol. I'm stubborn. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to put shit in my body. And so when I did do therapy one-on-one, and I had kids who were my clients, or I had even some adults like us who just don't want to take medicine, I could prove to them like, hey, I can help you conquer your depression and anxiety without medication. And benzos are so bad. They're habit forming, they're addicting, they're only short-term effective. Our clinic didn't even prescribe them. If you don't have anxiety and you take them and abuse them, like Xanax people abuse, you can form anxiety. They can kill you. Like, they're so bad for you. Benz, I really don't, because I'm going back to school to be a PA, so I can prescribe soon. So I would never prescribe benzos ever. With psychotic patients, you have to prescribe. And so that's been a huge mindset change for me, now going from outpatient therapy for people who are depressed and anxious to an inpatient, high risk, delusional, psychotic. You have to medicate, because you're using antipsychotics and mood stabilizers and things like that. I mean, we've had to do codes where patients are, I'll tell you a story.
Go for it.
I was gonna say, I'm sitting behind the desk just doing paperwork. It's a calm Saturday, and all of a sudden, I'll never forget this day, a patient comes out of her room with blood all over her face. And immediately you just think that she purposely hurt herself, because a lot of times they just want to leave. But we have something called TDO, which is temporary detention order, meaning that somebody, typically a family member, put this TDO on a patient in order to keep them here, because then they go to court to be committed, basically, because they're either unable to take care of themselves, a harm to themselves, or a harm to others. So like, you have to stay here. You no longer have basically the right to say, I want to leave, in a sense, right? So a lot of the times they'll try to like do stuff, creative things to try to get out. So she's in our heads, because they do this, if they hurt themselves, they'll go to the emergency room and they think they can leave, even though if they do go to the emergency room, they come right back. So they don't know that, though, most of the time. So I'm thinking she probably slammed her face into something and hurt herself or punched herself or whatever. So we're all pretty calm. We just see all this blood all over her face. She comes out of the room, she's screaming or whatever. And she's like, I need to go. the fucking hospital. And the nurse was sitting right next to me. So I just let her talk. Listen, this looks like medical. Medical's not me. You know what I mean? I'm clinical. So I'm up here. That's all you guys. So I'm sitting there doing my work. And she goes, well, what's going on? We have to know. And so she's assessing, doing her job. She goes, does it look like I fucking know? Like she's screaming, I'm bleeding. Da-da-da. And the nurse again is just like, yeah, but we need to understand, like, look, what happened? And that's the only thing she said. And all of a sudden, this patient with blood all over her face lunges towards me and tries to attack me. And our mental health counselors jump on her, grab her from me at the last second. And I moved out of the way last second. And I had heels on this day, which I should not have been wearing. And I helped, and we all kind of bring her down. She was a big girl. And I called code, we said code 7. And we bring her down until more staff comes, kind of gets her down. We had to get restraints out. We had to get injection and inject the medication into her to calm her down, because at that point, nothing else will calm her down until you get the injection. She's not going to take any orals. She's spitting at us. She's trying to bite us. And then we find out that the blood on her face was from her period, and that she had taken, and not to be so gross, but like she had taken blood from down there and smeared it across her face to try to make it look like she had hurt herself. But that's how sick these people are. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's so sad, but like this is where their minds are, in a sense. And that's why you can't not medicate that. Because when they do go back to what, I hate using the word normal, but when they do go back to like that equilibrium state of mind, they either are like, I can't believe I did that, or they're like embarrassed and never want to talk about the fact that they did that. You know what I mean? So you do need a little bit of some type of antipsychotic to be able to negate the fact that you originally wanted to smear that blood on your face, in a sense. Because you and I wouldn't do that. No matter how much we wanted to leave a facility, I know I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, no, that is bonkers. So, all right, so you mentioned code 7 in the story, and you sent me a text of your code thing. What are I feel like that might come up again later in this conversation. So for those listening, can you go through the codes real quick, just so they know, like, code 7 is some
the only codes that are called, because I really should know them all by heart, but the only ones that that's why I said the only ones that I actually know, because these are the ones that are called, are code 0, code 3, and code 7. Code 0, which was called today, is a medical code. So like there's a medical situation, so someone fell, you know what I mean, fainted, there's we need medic, wherever that is. Code 3, someone escaped. Those are fun. Those are super fun. And then, because this is a locked facility, you need a key to get into everywhere, to get onto the elevator, to change floors on the elevator, to get into bed, you know what I mean? Everywhere. So you don't even think about it until you start working there, and you're like, oh yeah, no shit, this is a fucking psychiatric hospital. Like, of course you do. Like, but you don't realize, because people are trying to escape and they're slamming things, and like, even like grown men, they don't care that you're a woman or whatever. Like, there's no sexism in this hospital. Like, they will hit you. You know what I mean? Like, I've been punched in the face by a patient. They don't. No one cares. They just want, and especially if they think you're a demon fighting their demons, they will hit you to get out. Like, they don't see what we see. So then you go code 7, and that's just an aggressive, angry patient. So those are the 3 ones that that I hear, which I know there's like a code red, a code blue, probably other codes, but I can't remember what they all are. Just
escapes. You've been around for an escape?
Yes.
How's that go? Is it like it is in the movies where everything locks down and everything?
So so typically what's good about, like, yes and no. What's good about like the code 3s is that because everything's locked, they can't get too far. You know what I mean? So like, if they break through our doors, which is hard to do, but they'll do it sometimes, especially if they're big guys, it's typically always a man. Or sometimes we just won't shut the door fast enough behind us and they like slip through and we don't notice in a sense, which I've never done that because I always make sure I close the door behind me because I will not be responsible for letting a patient break free. But like the big guys, they will break free but then they'll be stuck in a different room that they have to break free from. So like typically the code 3 will be called from like the other day it was called from like the basketball court, which is on my floor, but like not obviously my unit, but on my floor. So he got out of my unit and probably walked to the court. Now we have to get him out of the court. So it just involves a lot of people. It involves sedating them typically. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes it can involve just communication. You know what I mean? Sometimes we can persuade them, like, listen, because here's the thing, we don't want to put shit in restraints. That's the last thing we want to do.
Yeah.
It's traumatizing. We know it's traumatizing. So we don't want to put you in restraints. We don't want to sedate you. We don't want to traumatize you while you're here. So the first thing we're going to do is try to communicate with you. If we can't, like if you have period blood on your face and you're trying to spit it at us, we're going to sedate you. There's no conversation there. But if you're sitting in the basketball court and trying to look for a way out, we're going to be like, hey, why don't you come over here? Like, it's over. And then maybe you'll walk with us. And sometimes it happens. So sometimes it does.
So much to think about. That's wild. It's also something that like people who aren't in that don't think about really at all because we don't have to. It doesn't affect us usually. I was in Austin with Taryn like a month ago, and the homeless population there is like bonkers. The place where we were staying, we had to walk by like homeless towns or whatever to like get into the city. And so we saw a bunch of like people talking to themselves and like all sorts. And when you hear people talk about that situation or like any homeless situation, like most of the time it comes down to like mental illness. So you have, or not a good chunk of the time. So do you guys have like people off the streets, I guess, in there, or is it people that have been, so like how does that work, right? Because you have some people that don't get brought, like they're still on the streets, and then some like there's not really a rhyme or reason, really, is there? It's just like whether they get, I don't really know what I'm asking. Do you know what I'm asking, kind of?
Our homeless population is huge, especially with psychotic patients.
Yeah.
So like I said, we have 5 different units, right? Those 5 units are basically, one of them, we call it the land of no code. It's a depression anxiety unit, basically. It's called CER, Center of Emotional Regulation, I don't know, something like that. They all have homes. They all go home to families. Like, they're all good. Then there's TRC, that's the recovery center. 9 times out of 10, I think they pretty much have homes there too, or they really are just detoxing and they go to like residential places. So they can go to like rehabs and things like that. Then there's CDT, which is dual treatment. So like you have a substance problem and mental illness, they have homes. RSU and CIE, which is the facility I work in, the unit I work on, those are your psychotic units. And mine is probably the most acute one. They don't have homes. Not all of them. I shouldn't say that. So not all of them. A lot of them do, but a lot of them don't. And I just think that when you hear all these other units, you hear all the other things that they suffer from, and the fact that they typically have homes to go to, and then you hear that mine don't, it's like you have to think about why. You know what I mean? And I mean, if I had to take a guess based off of my experience, it's because a lot of families don't want to put up with mental illness, and a lot of the times families don't like to separate the fact that it's not the person that they like loved that's doing these things, it's their mental illness that's doing these things. So like when I got hit in the face by one of my patients, it was like the weirdest feeling ever because I really liked her. Like I really, really liked her. And she knocked the shit out of me, dog. Like she really, and the worst part was she had requested a one-on-one from me too. Like another patient had triggered her. She started to like get aggressive. She's a big joint too. She started to get aggressive. I said, "Hey yo, are you okay?" She's like, can I talk to you? So she starts going off in the seclusion room. We're talking. I'm sitting down so she doesn't think get what's the word? Because you're in a seclusion room. You don't want them to think that like you're trying to be threatening towards them. But I was just trying to get her away from the situation. She was about to throw hands with this other patient. Next thing you know, I know she's starting to hallucinate a little bit. I can see it. I hear it. Things she's saying. She's talking about things that don't make sense. And I go to stand up to call a code because there's no phones in the room. So I'm like, hang on 1 second. And she said something like, she said, she just hit you. You trying to fuck up with me or not, Lisa? You trying to fuck up with me or not? But the thing is, like I just said, I don't want to go against an illusion. But if she hit me, I'm like, how do we play into that? So I'm sitting here, I'm just like, she hit me? Word? Like, and I'm like, grabbing my face. And I'm just like, oh yeah? And she was like, you just hit me. You just hit me. Bow! Hits me in my face. So like, I almost like shook back. She really rocked me. And then I walked out and I said, call a code. Everyone was like, huh? Because I was really calm. And I said, call a code, I got hit. That day was crazy. But the thing is, the reason why I bring up that story is like, the reason I put myself in that situation was because she needed to talk to me because she liked me and I liked her in a sense. So like, I wasn't mad at her. And she snapped from being triggered from anger, rightfully so angry, because of her mental illness. So like, families don't do that. They don't say to themselves, that wasn't so-and-so, that was her mental illness. It wasn't her fault that she hit me. She thought I hit her spirits. And if we were sick enough to the point where we thought that somebody hit our spirits, I'm sure we'd probably whack them too. You know what I mean? So like when I remember the medical director of my facility called me that day, like the head psychiatrist in the whole hospital. And he was like, are you okay? And I was like, oh, my face hurts a little bit, like a little mark. Like he was like, no, he was like, I mean emotionally. And I was like, I think so. I was like, you don't know how to answer that question because you're like confused. You know what I mean? Like,
you haven't processed
I've never been in a fight with someone I didn't have beef with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and you can't hit them back.
Right.
But like, I didn't want to hit her back. So it's like other family members will get angry after being repetitively hit emotionally because they say some rude shit to you. I've been called some mean things, you know what I mean? But I can brush that shit off. And they hit you and it gets tiring. And when they don't take the medication, it gets more tiring and causes divorces and it causes family friction to the point where it's just like they give up. And
they're not trained for it either. Like
right.
you're trained for it.
And I can walk away and say code 7 and they can get medicated and that's that. And then she gets better in a sense. They can't keep employment. You know what I mean? They're like forever kind of in need of somebody to take care of them who may not want to because they're not compliant with their own treatment. Because 9 times out of 10, people return to the hospital due to not being compliant with medication. So we have a lot of people return.
Yeah, that's such a tough like situation, especially when you like discharge somebody and you know they don't got anywhere to go. Because you can't, like, you're not like a hotel. So it's almost like yeah, no, for sure. But it's like when you think about these different cities or like Virginia Beach, Austin, San Francisco, LA, whatever. It's like I don't know what the answer is, but the answer is not whatever we're doing now because it's clearly not working. So it's like I don't know. Like I feel like there's a misdiagnosis of the problem, like how it is. And obviously that's not really you're not in the business of solving homelessness, but you see it a lot. So I was just wondering your thoughts on it, because to me it's like when we were there, I was talking with Taryn a bit about it, and we were just like, yeah, it sucks, but like what can you actually do? It's like I don't know.
Nothing.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll move off the sad stuff.
I was gonna say.
All right. So before that, I want to touch on. So you were doing. It's been so long. For those listening, Lisa and I have known each other for forever. So we were catching up before. Now we're talking about, obviously, what we were talking about. And I am stumped of questions because I really just want to catch up. But we'll talk some shit that shouldn't be put on the internet. Although I will say this, though. You have been on your weight loss journey, and that's been super cool to see. You've been posting the progress, and that's been sick. And that's one of the things that, like, me personally, like, I try and take seriously health wise, because I don't want to be like that dad that has kids that are playing sports and you can't, like, you try and coach them and you walk up and down the field one time and you're like gassed. It's like, I'm not trying to be that. I'm not trying to be able to like exist in a kid's lives when I'm older, you know? So and it's so much easier to not do anything, like to just sit there and watch TV and eat. Like, I get it. Like, especially if you're tired and you're just like, I could just order Chick-fil-A, DoorDash, and do like, it's a problem. I hate that I have DoorDash and I have Dash Pass.
Me too. I accidentally paid for the annual. It was just supposed to be a trial.
Yeah, no, what I mean, it's always supposed to be a trial, isn't it? And then you forget to cancel it.
Toxic. Yeah, yep.
And then you look at how much you saved, and you're like, oh, you know, I think this is
worth
it.
It's worth it.
Yeah, this is definitely worth it. And then you keep going, and then it just never ends. So props to you for that also, because that's just it's really cool. It's really cool.
Yeah. You know, you get out of breath walking up the stairs one too many times, and you're like, this shit is ghetto.
Is that what it was for you?
Word, yes. So what had happened? Honestly, to be honest with you, if I could give you the jump start to what made me actually lose weight, because I started February 26th, 2019. Not me remembering the date. February 4th, 2019, my ex and I broke up. That was also our anniversary, so that's why I remember the date. I'm not crazy. The reason why I remember this is because this is the man that proposed to me. Right. So, fuck him. But you go through this thing in life where you're just like, you lose self-worth and you realize you gained all this weight and you don't know who you are anymore and you're not happy with yourself and you don't know, you know what I mean? So you're just like, okay, if I don't make a change now, you're either going to die from a heart attack or you're going to just be unhappy until you die from natural causes. So it's like, that's literally what inspired it. Because at the end of the day, and I tell my patients this too, because self-control, when I do groups and stuff in the hospital, I mean, a lot of them are angry, right? We have the angry psychotics and the happy psychotics. We try to keep them separate. The angry ones, I tell them all the time, you have to work on your self-control. It's the same thing with diet. And even when I do the addiction group, sometimes on the different units, like, same thing with being addicted to drugs and being addicted to sugar. Like, it's all self-control at the end of the day, right? So what I would do is, my diet was so bad is I would wake up every single morning before I went to like grad school, before I went to work or whatever I would do. And I would, not because I was hungry and needed it, but I would go to Dunkin' Donuts on my way. It's like a New York thing to do that, right? Dunkin' Donuts is huge in New York. So I don't even drink coffee like that, Eric. Like, I just would go there and I would get one strawberry donut and then something else, whether it was like a muffin, whether it was a coffee, whether, you know what I mean? Like, and not like a regular coffee, like a frozen salad, whipped cream, whatever sugary thing you could have, donut and that. Every single morning, I'm starting with my day with it, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, for what? And then you eat it so quickly, and it's already in one donut. I think it was 14 grams of sugar, 14 or 12, I can't remember. I used to know shit really well. But then I would do research and realize that women only get 25 grams of sugar a day. So I was like, I'm eating more than half of my sugar intake in one donut. Screw the other thing, just in the one donut that you eat in 3 seconds in one sitting. So I had to like reevaluate my life for a second. And I remember I did less than 5 grams of sugar a day. And then when I plateaued, I did like as minimum carbs I could do. I was working out 6 days a week, sometimes twice a day, doing HIIT training with Krav Maga and lifting. You know, you start liking it. You can't do something you don't like. You know what I mean? Yeah. You have to actually, like, you can't force yourself to diet. That doesn't work either. You can't do all the fads, the keto and the paleo, or this, that. That shit's stupid too. Like, you can't, all that protein cookie bullshit that has 12 grams of sugar in it, you might as well have the donut. So I started to compare everything to the donut. Like, if I looked at a nutrition bar, it says nutrition bar, why does it have more grams of sugar than the donut? You know what I mean? Yeah. The ingredients. So a lot of it, like, if you like education and if you like yourself, like, it wasn't that hard. Yeah. You know?
No, it's crazy because, like, the self-control part, like, if I have snacks in our apartment, I will eat all of the snacks. So I just don't
Mhm.
buy them
So you
anymore.
don't buy
Like,
any.
yeah, I just don't buy them. And
Same.
then we run into trouble. And Jenna's like, "Oh, can you get some snacks from the store?" And then like in 2 days they're gone because she had one of them and I had the rest. And I was like, I hate myself afterwards. So I just
Yeah.
don't buy them. And that's been like a good solution. I want to get to the point where they can be here and I don't just like get bored and eat them, because that's really what it is. Like if I'm doing stuff, I don't. It's when I'm bored and I'm like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? It's like, oh, there's some cookies. I'll just eat those because that's fun, you know.
Well, I would drive past the Dunkin' and I would look at it and I would say no. And I would put my foot on the gas pedal and I would go, I swear to God, every day. And I go past it, like, you don't need it, you don't need it, you don't need it. And I was like, okay, you passed it. Because you're not going to make the U-turn. You're not going
Yeah.
to make the U-turn and turn around. That's when you know you're fat. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
When you gotta make the
you're not
U-turn.
that fat. Word. So I'm like, no. And I remember, may he rest in peace, he died from COVID. That shit is crazy. That there was my 7-Eleven guy knew me very well.
Mhm.
Because I would go to 7-Eleven late at night and I'd get all the snacks.
Yeah.
And I remember one day after the gym, I went there to get like, and it was like a 2-gram sugar. It was actually a very good protein bar. I would recommend. I don't know the name of it. I know what it looks like. And I was so hungry, and I went to get after the gym, and he was like, Lisa, and I was like, oh yeah, how you doing? He's like, oh my God. He was like, you look so different and you haven't been here so long. And I was like, I can't come here anymore. I was like, this is where I used to get all my snacks. And he was like, this is incredible. Like, you know what I mean? So like that was all motivation too.
Yeah.
Like that shit was that the commenting on people's like when you do it in a healthy way, that shit goes so far. You know what I mean? Those compliments go such a long way. It just keeps motivating you to keep going.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel that from people that I know, like you and other people who've said that. So I try and keep the energy up. Like when you made your fit Instagram or whatever, let's try and keep the energy up on the Instagram. Always putting like the clap emojis on everything you did. And like for those listening, to like just do that. It takes like 3 seconds to do it. It means a lot. It means a lot to people as well. Like even if you don't really know them, it's like you want people to do well around you. It's like why just take a second to do it. And also take a second
especially when you don't know them.
Especially it's even better. And also take a second to subscribe to my freaking YouTube channel. I know half of you aren't subscribed, you nerds.
Dickheads.
Yeah. I feel like, have you noticed with COVID a higher inflow? So like I know because when did you start doing the therapy? Was it before COVID or during?
Let's see. I had surgery December before COVID, and then I was supposed to start my new therapy job, and then the day that I was supposed to enter the office, the office closed for COVID. That was ghetto as hell. And then I finally started a little bit later, like a month or two later, but I went to the office for like a week. They like didn't train me at all. They just kind of showed me what to do for 3 seconds. And then we went back to like telehealth. And stuff like
So
that.
maybe you don't know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Have you seen a higher influx of people like our age during COVID come? Like, have the numbers gone up? And then like now that we're kind of out-ish of it, gone down? Or like, have you noticed that sort of thing?
I do know the answer. The answer is yes. Yeah. So COVID, when we had I was so stressed out during the peak of COVID, when everyone was home too, especially. I had 93 clients in my caseload, and Cuomo, dickhead, passed a law that that if you had Medicaid, you can bill for 15-minute sessions. But what 15-minute therapy is effective? There's no such animal. So that's a wellness check. You know what I mean? So I would still.
And you can lie your way through that.
Yeah,
if you don't actually want to talk about it.
Right. So I would still give clients like 30, 45-minute hours, sometimes sessions, but we would bill them for the 15 or whatever because it still was the same billing. So it didn't matter. So my boss would say, okay, since you could do 15-minute sessions, I want you to do 15 clients a day. So I would say, so now they're all hour sessions, that's 15 hours. or you know what I mean? I mean, it would always be hours, but like you know the math from 15
Yeah,
minute sessions
that's
versus
fucked for you.
right. Oh my gosh, I
That's
would be
your whole
working.
day, like listening to,
Yeah,
like, not to
people
belittle these
bitch.
people's problems,
Say
but
it.
yeah,
Say it with your chest.
that's 15 hours
Exactly.
listening to people complain about shit that like you don't really care about that much.
I don't. Eric, I would wake up and start at like 8 a.m. Do you know? And this is gonna get me canceled, but because I had COVID, right? So
Mhm.
and I would work, and I worked while having COVID, but COVID would knock me out because I was so tired from it.
Yeah.
So I'd have my AirPods and I would lay down. And I had a couple clients who just talked and talked and talked and talked and never let me talk and talk and talk and talk and talk.
Did
And
you
sometimes
knock?
they just need, yeah. Here's the thing. I would hear them be like, "Are you there?" Right? And that would wake me up. And I would be like,
Oh
"What'd you
my
say? I'm
God.
sorry. I just lost service for a second, or I just lost connection."
You were
And
the
then they would
fucking worst.
repeat themselves, and I wouldn't like lose their. They would still like me, and I would be able to respond and give them the last like.
That's fucking bonkers. That's so funny. Oh
Yeah,
my God.
that's why I like to do telephone over like telehealth, because I could just like cook myself lunch while they was talking on the phone and mute them and stuff. Well, you know what I mean? And I was listening.
Yeah.
I always do my best to really truly listen and give the
No,
best
of
type
course,
of like
of course.
therapy I could give. I never really wanted to false. That was really just when I was really sick.
Yeah.
But like, it was
No,
crazy.
that's nuts. Well, also the thing with doing like, I feel like with some of those types of like clients that they just need somebody like to listen to them. And so like
Yeah.
if you're doing like folding laundry or whatever, just on the phone, it's like you're just a friend, a sounding board almost, and who's seen a lot of problems, so you give better advice than most other 25-year-olds. Like, it's like, what 25-year-old do you really want advice from? It's like not many.
And a lot of them didn't know what I looked like yet either, so they didn't even know my age at the time. And like I would tell my supervisor, I'd be like, I feel like I'm doing so and so a disservice because I just sit there and listen. And they said, no, if that's what they need, if they don't have a support system and they just need active listening to utilize emotional ventilation, like then you're not doing them a disservice. So that's exactly what you just said, is exactly like what it was in a sense. Some clients just needed to talk. You know?
Yeah, I feel like that, like with COVID especially, so many people became wrapped up in like their own world of problems that everyone forgot to be friends to everybody else, and then it made other people worse. And that's really hard. Like I tried really hard to not do that. Like we had like our soccer teams and stuff would like check in on everybody all the time to make sure everybody was doing all right. And then when we got to go back outside and start playing again, like I'm not gonna lie, if I didn't have soccer, I'd have gone nuts during COVID, because it was the only thing that we could do because it was outside. They're like, oh, social distance. Like, yeah, okay, I'll just stand 10 yards from you. We'll just pass the ball back to each other. And it's like, that's what we'd be doing anyways. So yeah, I'd have gone crazy, like, because the gyms weren't open and all sorts. And I like needed to get something out somewhere. And so soccer, we started playing. Well, I started going to, so they closed all the outdoor fields in Virginia until like, I don't know, May or June of 2020. But by the end of April, I was going back on the field by myself, even if the sign was like, the sign's closed. So like without that, I'd have gone bonkers. And I can't imagine like not having that outlet. And I feel like you probably, I mean, you listen to everyone who didn't have that outlet, or a lot of people that didn't have that outlet. And I feel like I will run in a bit, so I'll wrap it up with this. But I feel like lesson learned from COVID is like everybody's dealing with stuff, and people should just be nicer to each other generally. But I don't know.
No, I think it's not even just COVID. Like it's that's what I've learned with having my job, is because a lot of people will say to me like, how do you, I think someone today asked me, they said, don't you get overwhelmed with your job, in the sense of like, how do you cope with going home and having to hear, because I hear traumas all day long. A lot of times, like psychosis doesn't just come, it comes from genetics most of the times. Like schizophrenia, if it runs in your family, chances are you might get it. And then weed doesn't cause it, but if you smoke weed at a young age, it will activate quicker, and it will normally come between ages 18 and 26, I think. So if you have a lot of trauma, though, chances are you can also develop these types of illnesses as well. So I hear traumatic, like, I mean, people 9 times out of 10 are getting sexually assaulted by family members or this, you know what I mean?
Jesus.
All day long I hear this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, all day long. And everyone's like, how do you deal with that? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it almost in a selfish, weird way actually helps my life because it gives you perspective of like, your shit is not as bad as you think it is, only because it's like, you're not the only, like I said, the very beginning of this whole, conversation, like, you're not the only one going through shit, dog.
Yeah.
We're all doing it, and we're all just doing it in different ways. And no one's shit is really better than the other person's shit. And even if you think it is, and I told my patients this today, because they all respect me so much, because what, I wear nice outfits, or I have makeup on, or I sit behind a fancy desk, and I said to them, I know y'all think I have my shit together. I don't. I said, maybe this day last year, I was switching with you when I was on the side. I wasn't, but I was like, I've never been admitted to a psych hospital. But I should have been low key. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's like I've been there. I've wished I wasn't alive at times, right? And I've been in headspaces that these people have been in.
Yeah.
And the only difference is some of us are better at hiding it, and some of us are good liars. Some of us haven't gone through it yet. So like, a lot of the times, I think we all should just need to realize that when you throw all your shit on other people, maybe also just ask how they're doing too.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of what it is, because you're allowed to vent to other people, but at the end of the day, you don't have to do it that day, but then the next day, how are you doing, by the way? Like, check in with each other.
Yeah.
Type of stuff. So I always try to make sure I'm like, hey, you know what? Fuck, I forgot to ask, how are you doing? I'll randomly hit people up that I haven't talked to in a minute. How are you doing? I always try to like think about how I talk to people now, and I try to let the small shit go. You know what I mean? It's not worth it.
No,
it's not worth it. I see so many families fall apart for no reason.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You got to. That's why I was super happy that when I put that post out that you responded, because I was like, damn, I haven't talked to her in forever. We need to catch up anyways outside of this. So
I know.
We should. All right, people. With that, oh wait, do you want to plug your fitness thing? Are you still doing the fitness Instagram or anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
We can do my regular Instagram, I guess, if you want, because my fitness one is mainly for my fitness too. It was mainly to keep me accountable, which I really should start doing. So my main one is, do I just say it, or do you just go pop? How does that work?
I mean, I'll put it in the description, but you can say it also.
My main one's Muls, MULS 13, and then my fitness one is Lily.fit, I think. Not me not knowing.
This is what you get when two old friends do a podcast and we try and make it like an actual podcast, but we're just shooting shit anyway. So.
Oh, word.
All right, guys. With that, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.